Okay, all set.
So good evening, everybody. With it being 6 o'clock on Thursday, April 1st, 2021, I will call this meeting of the Bartlett School Building Committee to order. And just a reminder that on March 12, 2020, Governor Baker signed an executive order relieving government boards and committees from compliance with certain open meeting law requirements due to the COVID-19 emergency. Under the order, public bodies may hold meetings without providing physical public access, so long as the public has access to deliberations through alternative means. Alternative means include telephone or video conferencing and other methods of providing real-time public access to government meetings. In this case, our alternative means is by utilizing the Zoom software, and I do believe that the link for this meeting was posted on the school district website prior to the meeting. Also, public bodies may allow for remote participation in meetings by all members, including the chair, with no members being physically present at the meeting location. Also, as a reminder, this meeting is being recorded by both audio and video and may be posted to the school district website as well as the school district YouTube page. With that being said, the first item on the agenda is the approval of our minutes from the meeting on March 18th, 2021. Are there any questions or comments regarding the minutes that have been provided? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Blythe made the motion, seconded by Mrs. Contos. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I will poll the committee. Mrs. Contos.
Yes.
Mrs. Nieves.
Yes.
Mr. Young.
Yes.
Mrs. Blythe.
Yes.
Mr. Ablas.
Yes.
And I vote yes. The motion passes unanimous. The next item on the agenda is the designer report. I assume that we'll start with you, Kent.
Yep, thank you very much. And I appreciate everybody's time. I know this was an ad, this meeting, and I think it's going to be a good one because we're kind of in a nice stage where it's starting to get exciting 2 weeks before we submit to the MSBA. So I'm going to share my screen and open the show. And I'm just going to test this. Just let me know, did that advance?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through three steps. We're going to go through the educational plan that the district's been developing. And then you're going to see a series of diagrams that is extracted from that vision, that educational plan. And then the last step is we begin to test the educational plan, the diagrams in the building. So it's really kind of 3 steps of development. And this is about the level the MSBA wants to see when we submit in 2 weeks. And I will say, typically the MSBA doesn't see developed floor plans, but because you have an existing building, we took a deeper dive into that. So we want to be a little careful not to develop the plan too much because they really want to have this still very open. But with that, I'm going to kick it over to Gina and Fran, who are going to walk us through some highlights of the educational plan. Gina?
Good evening, everyone. I'm not sure that everyone got the news that Bartlett High was officially awarded the designation for 2 innovation pathways. One was advanced manufacturing, the other one was healthcare and human assistance. And as we're projecting the new or renovated building 5 years out, one of the things that we wanted to make sure was incorporated into the design was these 2 pathways. As you're aware, they are not Chapter 74 programs. They were designed by the state. Innovation pathways were designed by the state to kind of fill in the gaps that vocational schools traditionally had filled. As they gotten more selective in their admissions process and not serving the population they were designed to serve, there's been a gap in the pipeline of schools to fill in high labor demand areas. And in the greater Worcester area, these were 2 of the top 3 areas that the economic blueprint said were areas of high labor demand. So we undertook this pathway to try to prepare Bartlett High graduates with worksite experience and to go on to college and be prepared to fill those areas of high demand. So as we walk through this process with the architectural firm and the staff at the school, tried to figure out, we know this is what's going to be happening 5 years from now. So how do we plan for this? Gina, if you want to talk about
Sure.
labs and the location.
Yep. So with both of these pathways, both would require some type of unique lab. And we would like them in the future to be located centrally within the building so that all students have access to them. The advanced manufacturing located more so near our math classrooms and our simulated healthcare lab within the vicinity of our science classrooms, as well as the school nurse in our community center.
Do you want me to jump in, Kent?
Yeah, this just speaks to the auditorium and the gym and the CAF grouping.
So as you know, we use our auditorium and our gymnasium and our cafeteria quite often for basketball games and special events. And so when in the opportunity of redesigning how things could work, we thought a community center hub that could be easily shut off from the rest of the building makes a lot of sense for the kinds of activities that we want to be able to continue to do with our community. You know, holding ceremonies and having access to a cafeteria within a close vicinity makes sense. Also for thinking about when we rent our spaces out to the community for dance recitals or whatnot, having those two things within close proximity would be, I think, very useful. We've spent a lot of time talking about our vision and what we want to be able to give back to the community with this renovation project. And we do a lot with our community. And so this gives us an opportunity, and it's kind of odd the way it all flushed out. I think there's a method behind their madness with the architects in having us talk about these things. We have an adult education center where we know that there's community members that come in and out during the school day. We also have recently hired a family liaison, and we have existing sped pack groups, and we've been working with UInc, outside mental health services. And we also have a longstanding partnership with the Family Health Center of Worcester, where they come in and provide dental care. So we were, you know, thinking about all these different things. We think putting them together and having one centralized area that has its own entrance and exit makes sense. And also having those community focused centers where we're providing resources to not just our students, but their families, located centrally to our nurse's office, our guidance staff, and the simulated healthcare lab that you previously heard about, enables that community connection to be in our school in a very safe, centrally located area.
That's great. And, you know, these 3 pages summarize a 40-page document that the district's working on. And so this just is some highlights, and but it's a big driver with the project. And what I want to walk through are some diagrams. So we go from the words and the vision, and now we start to look at it in diagram form. You know, how are these spaces, where they want to be next to. So it's all part of a process. And this is really how the MSBA sees your vision kind of evolve into a floor plan, if you will. But here you see, you know, kind of district focus programs, the community resource, adult education, the pre-K program, the district office that you already have. And then kind of centrally located is the academic core, kind of the heart of the school. So we have the academic programs, special education, general academics, innovation, administration, and guidance. And then we come to the community portion. And as part of a lot of the conversations, the cafeteria, auditorium, gymnasium seem to serve the community of, you know, Webster well, and that's a real focus. So, you know, any design option should try to locate those 3 pieces together. So how do you do that with this project? And that's kind of what gets really exciting on what the building can lend itself to. We're just honing into some detail because we're not just talking about those three big things. Of course, it's nice to separate the academic from the community during after hours and community functions, but honing into the spaces. I think what everyone says, how do you build flexibility in the future? Well, it's by proper adjacencies. So here, there's been a real thoughtful consideration to have the digital media lab that can be a film studio, a green screen that's next to the media center. So those spaces have a synergy. English language support spaces that are off the media center. And of course, these are just concepts. They might move around the building, perhaps having some special education spaces adjacent to the media center, and then large group support that's gonna provide areas that are contained and acoustically separated from the large media center itself. Shifting over to the pre-K, this is a conversation. So of course, the pre-K program has to have a play area. It also has to have direct access and parent parking so we can monitor, safety in and out of the building. And then part of special education conversation, life skills, it'd be great if that could have some close relationship. Doesn't have to be right up against it, but just some close dialogue with it. And so these are the things that we're kind of peeling back the onion and discovering as part of this process. Innovation cluster. What's really been, I think, pretty exciting for us is we hear a lot. We want to come into the school and we want to see the great things that are happening. And so here it's this innovation cluster. So we have advanced manufacturing that Fran just touched upon, how important that is, a maker space. And that maker space can support the art program, advanced manufacturing, the technology program. So one space that has all these tools can support, 3 or 4 different programs. And that's what smart, planning is. And that's what we're doing. So we're not just diving into the floor plan. We're trying to strategize it with language and then into these diagrams and then test the floor plans. And one important aspect was if the math department, kind of one of the core academic, could have close proximity to advanced manufacturing. And then we shift to the community cluster. I think this is really interesting. The superintendent just spoke upon it. It's about these district programs that if they could have direct access, you have adult education, the community resource, the healthcare pathway, health classroom that's part of the program, and the nurse. If this could be an area that could be accessed kind of independently, but still have a connection to the students would be very important. And part of this is how does this all like come together, and it goes back to the program that everybody's been, working really hard on, and then beginning to look at your existing building and how it lends itself to receive all these great ideas. So one thing we did for mapping out, just to take away from the last meeting, how can we map out the different square footages that we're talking about? And there's kind of 3. There's the proposed square footage that kind of has this blue bar, and all the categories along the bottom align with the MSBA categories. And then we put in the purple tone the existing, and then where the MSBA is. The summary on to the side shows where you are kind of tracking with 184,000 square feet. We keep looking at the existing floor plans, and we've kind of refined this number a bit, so we feel comfortable around 184. Doesn't mean it might not shift up a little bit or down a little bit as we go into the next phase. But we feel comfortable that we're honing in there. We are tracking the mechanical penthouses as a separate item on top of that number. Then when you look at the student population, the MSBA, we're over 100,000 square feet. And then the proposed with all the program, we're at 158,000 square feet. So that summarizes all the program conversation. And I think this is going to be a good diagram when the MSBA sees it, that they clearly know that your group is serious. We're trying to track it. You know where they are. You know you're existing, and you know what you're comfortable with your proposed. Oh. Okay.
And I have one quick question on this.
Yes. You want me? I'll go back. Yep.
Under the vocation technology, what constitutes existing?
That's what we categorized in the program for the existing. So we have the business tech. We have.
Oh, okay, it's a business. Okay, because I was thinking the old classrooms are now the new admin space, but okay, so it's the business tech classrooms that
The
exist.
chapter 74
In
funded
a-
programs.
Yeah, in a marketing space, and I think one other we had classified as existing. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Yeah, we're staying kind of pre-COVID, but aligning with the spaces that you already have. Okay. Everyone had seen this slide. I kind of touched upon this, 6-7 years ago. This is really all you'd submit to the MSBA as far as what you're going to look at, because they really wanted you to focus on that vision in the program. Now we kind of get into the graphics a little bit more. We test the floor plans. So I think it's a good thing with the process, but the big takeaway is you're just looking at square footage and what you're going to renovate versus addition. And obviously there's going to be some number of costs associated with that square footage. So years ago, this satisfied the MSBA. Now they just want to see you test it a little bit in the floor plan. But these are your basic options, and we're presenting 5 options for the PDP. I feel comfortable that's going to be enough for them. If they come back and ask us to test some more, that'll be fine. Maybe there's some hybrids of these options, but these are good bases. So you have option 1, the code upgrade. We have to do that. It's 100% of the existing. You can't move the walls, but you can put new mechanical, electrical, tel data, you can put new ceilings in there because you got to access the ceilings to put fire protection. They allow you to paint the walls and put some new floors in. So it will feel like a nice clean school, but it's not going to have air conditioning. It's not going to have anything that you see at comfort level with peer schools. It's really like, what does it take to bring this up to code? Have a light touch on the finishes, but not go too far. And when you update the mechanicals, that's going to be a really healthy number that you're going to see on the cost. So they want to see this option as a baseline, but you cannot move the walls. So all the program that's been developed, it may not fit within those existing spaces. So then that brings us to option 2, where we're just going to track this as keeping 100% of the school, but now we can move the walls where we see fit to maybe accommodate that program. Maybe try to move the healthcare classroom closer to the healthcare pathway, which maybe we couldn't do previously. So now option 2 is going to be more extensive because now we're going to start moving some walls around. But we feel it's important that we have an option that tracks the program at 158,000 square feet and then the surplus space outside the program at 26,000 square feet. I think that's going to be important to look at for a comparison. And then option 3, this option would be a deduct from your existing building. So we look at portions of the building that we could remove and align the building design with the proposed program. So this program would be at 158,000, and then it would remove 26,000 square feet. And again, you see this plus 3,000 for the mechanical. We want to track this separate because the MSBA might say, add that 3,000 square feet into your gross number. But we want to let them know that we're tracking it and may not agree that it should be, or we may have to. Typically with them, if it's enclosed and it has a roof and walls, they want it to be part of the building. But I just want to note it as a separate item. Meaning the MSBA might come back and say, this is really a 161,000 square foot proposed plan. And then for good measure, because the MSBA is going to want to see it, okay, if we go a little bit more aggressive and take a bigger part out, does that change the dynamic of the plan? Sticking at 158 and then new construction at 158,000. So this is really the big conversation. Regardless of what the design options look like, it really can be solved just with these line items here. And I think it's a good strategy going into the PDP in a couple weeks. Any questions on that before I move forward? Because the rest is a lot of graphics that are tied to this, but really this is what you're submitting. And I think it covers it all. It keeps it co-compliant. It keeps a renovation that you do meet kind of the vision without removing anything. And then it looks at different levels of getting to that square footage.
Kent, I have a question. You
Yes.
mentioned with option one that the option for HVAC is not an option. Does that option get introduced with two?
Yes, so 2, 3, 4, and 5 would be, full comfort. We'd upsize the emergency generator. We would make sure that you had the comfort level. And just for this, we'd track it as a mid-grade. So it'd probably be air conditioning in some spaces, maybe displacement air in other spaces, but every space would have a high level of comfort and relatively a level of cooling. Most schools today are getting full AC. It's not uncommon because the systems have evolved. But no, the option one would be ventilation and heat, because that's what is tied to the Mass State Code.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. 2, 3, 4, and 5 bring you up to the same level as other building projects with the MSBA. I guess that's it makes it more in line with other projects that are that have been developed recently. All right, so I'll just go through. Here's the code upgrade. We're not adding parking, but we have noted, not in this plan, but we will note we need accessible parking spaces for handicap accessibility. There will be some curb cuts associated with this. Highlighted in that tan tone, that's sidewalks that we'd want to remove and make sure that they meet code compliant and ADA access. There's a lot of kind of deviations throughout that. So it's really a light touch. We're not developing the landscape overall. We're making sure that there's accessible parking spaces and you can get into the building, and the circulation around the building is code compliant. But we're not developing the site. There's no new ball fields and no new parking, but we will provide handicap parking to meet code around the building. But we're not changing the parking lots or anything like that. And then when we get into the building plan, now remember, we're not moving walls. So this is an attempt to match the program and some of the relationships in those diagrams. And I'll start right in the middle, the innovation cluster. And so we have an art room that can fit into this space, but it's oversized a little bit. It doesn't meet what's in the program. So it's oversized by 400 square feet. And then in this other art room, we combined it with the maker space. So now you have two program spaces that are in one big space. In an ideal situation, there'd be a wall separating them. But the business is kind of in the same location. We moved advanced manufacturing, that new program, but it's undersized because it has to fit into the existing walls, and we don't have another location. So a compromise to the code compliant option here is advanced manufacturing would be below square footage. Administration's in a good spot. It's over square footage. Your classrooms these could be masked, and they're close to that innovation. So remember that diagram, that was something you were trying to achieve. And we're able to do this because we're concentrating this program in the heart. But the classrooms remain undersized. I think this middle classroom that I have CR3 is around 600 square feet, and the target is 825. Again, we're trying to get up to state standards on the size of the spaces. Shifting to the left side of the page, clustered with the district office, below that to the south. Now we're within the existing walls, and we have the community resource space. We have adult education. The office would be part of this space. We don't have good control of how you get into the building. So adult ed here still would go through the main corridor. It wouldn't have a dedicated entry as desired in the plan. Healthcare pathway we have here. It's under the square footage. The healthcare classroom we've adjusted, and then the nurse is slightly over square footage. But programmatically, we were able to group that, but it doesn't meet the square footage that we talked through during the programming. Shifting over to the right side is the community wing. And here we introduced the pre-K program, which fits nicely into these spaces. One of the rooms doesn't have windows, and we don't have the toilets, but we feel as part of the program requirement for pre-K classrooms, we can make an argument that we could add the toilets for a code compliant pre-K program in this option. So we might be able to support that. And then we moved life skills that wanted that close proximity into these spaces that were the former healthcare classrooms, and we had an unassigned classroom. So again, we're shifting spaces around because you have the room, and we're able to do that. Auditorium stays the same, band, chorus, all that stays the same. The gym stays the same. What you see in these dark shades that say vacant, that adds up to that 26,000 square feet that we had as vacant unprogrammed space. So we had that kind of clustered around that would be unprogrammed. And then we get upstairs to the second floor, kept the science room exactly where it is. We have the post-secondary located here, computer science, which may or may not be in the right spot. We're just trying to find kind of a space that it might fit nicely in. And then we have our classrooms, which are pretty much in their same location. And then we're tracking some more of that vacant space that's over that proposed 158. We've moved the digital lab in this empty space next to the media center. So that was in the program. We have the two ELL1 and ELL2 near the media center, student seminar. So we're trying to match that program as well as we can. And we have a lot of undersized spaces, and we're not meeting the adjacencies as well as we could. So then we shift to option 2, which is 100% retained as well. Now here, we begin to make this a real project because we know we have a lot of site issues we need to resolve. So outside, we're having stormwater corrected. We're looking at a lot of the roadways. Perhaps we resurface a lot of the roadways and provide new curbing. Immediately around the school, you see dashed in, we would track this as a concept, the limit of work. So we'd want to make sure we focus where the work is happening. And the new school has all new walkways. We'll certainly look at addressing these loop roads, either in a different shape or configuration, but at least we're carrying a cost to kind of resurface and recurb, making sure there's handicap spaces. You might see in this orange, we have the new pre-K space that we want to carve out because that's next to the pre-K inside. And then outside the classroom, it'd be great to renovate and kind of, reinvigorate the outdoor dining on the north outside the cafeteria. So we're tracking all these activities because we want to capture that in a magnitude cost as well. We've also feel it's important to get new parking. You have a parking lot that's sandwiched between two sections of wetlands that is sloped. It needs to be redone, needs to be safe and meet standards. So we'd propose new parking here, as well as in the RFP, there is a desire to, investigate a new multi-purpose field, which we relocated over the existing multi-purpose field because that has the correct orientation going north to south. We're tracking around 500 bleacher seats here. And with bleachers, it's considered a stadium by the plumbing code, and we need to put toilets. And so we're tracking a 1,500 square foot, I'll kind of say no thrills, concession ticket toilet at this time, because you're going to need that once you introduce fixed bleachers. That's the kind of the way it is. We could study the multi-purpose field in the center, but we're trying to be resourceful and keep the existing baseball field and basketball courts. But the new softball field would have to be relocated. Now I'm not here telling like you have to do this, but it was in your RFS and we want to track it. And this could be like a menu item. So we could have the value for the school, and then we could have all the fields, the concession as kind of a menu item below the line. And this is something we can discuss, really throughout the year, throughout the fall, how these fields are going to be either in the project or not.
Kent, I have a question with this kind of
Yep.
proposed design.
Yep.
Today, we often have two soccer games going at once and football practice going. How would that work in this proposed model?
There'd be a soccer overlay over the baseball and the new softball. So we'd make sure we at least had that soccer overlay for that fall athletics. So you would have the multi-purpose field and the
Would that
soccer overlay.
But would that field then allow for two soccer games to go on at the same time, and then football practice would have to happen somewhere else? I'm just curious.
Yeah. There's not a lot of space even today. If you look at kind of the programs that you have out there, it's basically the equivalent of what you have now, but we would make sure we got parking that sport of that multi-purpose field. So yeah, you could have a soccer overlay over baseball and softball, and then you have the multi-purpose field. So it's going to come down to a scheduling. Now remember, you're capped at 8% for the site. So they don't really tell you what's excluded, but pretty much all these sports fields are going to be excluded, and the concession stand is going to be excluded. Most of the 8% is going to be in your stormwater and sidewalks and some lighting and utilities. So you always have to kind of weigh the option of what they're going to consider for that kind of reimbursement. Okay, so let me just keep going. So the option 2. So what's interesting about this is now we can move the walls, and so we had that community kind of resource cluster over to the left side, and we can get the proper adjacencies. I'm going to zoom in, but sometimes my computer glitches out a little bit. So now we can control with access directly from the outside into a common vestibule. We could build in some toilets. You could go to community resource, or you can go to adult education. So you have some real control there without folks going into the building. The wellness program that's being proposed, and we hope the MSBA is going to support that. It's in this community resource area. It's for the students, and it's part of their curriculum, but it also is working in conjunction. So there's some real rationale to keep it in this group next to the healthcare pathway. So right here are 2 spaces in blue that we're putting in the proposal for consideration for reimbursement. And so I think smart adjacencies and a rationale, which I see here, will only help that. So then we go into the center of the plan. It's the innovation cluster, the heart of the school. So you can see we now have advanced manufacturing in its proper location, its proper size, makerspace, business marketing, both art rooms to their proper spot size. And then outside, we have, I'll say off of the gross square footage, we created these nooks that could be for display. You could work on projects out there. And so by beginning to remove a few walls, you begin to create some relief within the plan and kind of break that long corridor with rooms off of it. Now you're creating some really interesting nooks kind of along the way that kind of celebrate the great things that are going on. We looked at the classrooms here. We might need to remove some perimeter walls on the inside so we can get those classrooms to meet some state standards. We can start moving teacher planning and student seminar into that cluster for a neighborhood. And then we have administration and guidance. And then over to the right-hand side, we have the pre-K program, where now by removing some walls, we can create better adjacency, and we can begin to get the right square footage for that program and the support. But we still have some vacant unassigned spaces because we're populating this option still at your existing square footage. And then upstairs, the science cluster, we're just showing this as the walls exist right now, but most likely we'll try to meet the state standards and move a couple partitions and get these aligning with prep rooms in between. But we feel that where the science rooms are, because of the structural party, it's a good area. We did locate post-secondary. That could have a special education 18 through 22 program. That could have a dialogue with the adult education and community resource down below. But it's going to be hard right now without really digging into the design to get this on the first floor. But we could create kind of a vertical relationship for control because we know that these students leave campus from time to time. And then we go in the center. Now, the media center right now is about double of what's in the MSBA template. But then looking at this in a different way, we can get the digital media, ELL, the media center is smaller, but it has computer science clustered with it. We have a large group classroom, special education by forming more of a suite. So you have the space, but by adding partitions and removing some, we can meet the square footage and align with the program adjacency better. And then when we go into C building, just populating special education and general classrooms seems to work well. Okay, so I'll just kind of quickly go through, but I think you get the gist. So now we're going to renovate 86% of the existing. And now I know this, some of these percentages weren't in the take home, the draft show sent yesterday. So I'll resend this out because I put some of these numbers on it. So now what you have is your existing building and you're retaining 86% of your existing building, so you're deducting the rest. And how that's done is we look at areas that are infill out of the main A, B, and C structured block, and that's really the cafeteria. And because the buildings are so wide, we're able to extract some outdoor space within the floor plate, and that's going to help us get down to meet your program square footage. But taking a look at the plan, we're still within that limit of work. We have our drop-off plazas, playgrounds, outdoor eating. You can see here, this is the area of your existing cafeteria. So if we remove that piece, which is pretty much an independent piece from the main structural of A and B, which is going to cost as much as new construction because of the stepping, the 3 tiers of the floor plate itself, and all the glazing, and then the roof. That's going to be a high ticket item to replace. But here with this option, you deduct it, you're able to get more outdoor space and a separation from the academic to more of the district programs. When I go in the floor plan, you'll see this better. For comparison, I kept the site exactly the same. We have the multi-purpose field and the parking, the concession stand. So it really aligns with what you saw previously. So now moving in here. Now the pre-K and pre-K program's not in C building anymore next to the gym, but it's near district office. So you'd have your play area and your parent pickup and drop off all controlled over on the east side. And then the life skills, we actually can cluster the life skills program within that block because there is a desire to have that program have some adjacency. You will also have the community resource now as well. So you have this real district program heavy reprogramming on the first floor. And then over on the east side on A building. So now if you look into the center of the plan, we have our art. We shifted chorus in the band room over here and some new renovated spaces that'll be kind of acoustically separated. And then we have your maker space and advanced manufacturing. And the beauty of this is by removing the cafeteria, you reclaim green space, you provide workspace or project laydown space outside, and also we're able to have a nice dialogue and separation with the pre-K program. Now, again, part of the strategy to reduce that square footage without disturbing the exterior of the main buildings is taking some space out of the interior. And so capturing outdoor space is space reclaimed. So you don't necessarily, it's not going to show up here in template, but if we take out the second floor plate and the first floor plate, you can have a great work area with outdoor connection. And now you'll notice those are in the location of your existing inward classrooms, the classrooms that have poor ventilation and heat control and no natural light. By extracting this out, you're bringing an abundant natural light, you're providing new life into the heart of the building, and we're able to get some natural ventilation if we study this carefully. And again, you can have a great connection with the art or the maker space to use this outdoor space. And then the same strategy we used over in C with an outdoor classroom, and we kept the locker rooms on the lower level, but we brought the active programs to the first level for greater supervision. So you have the gymnasium, the weight room, and the fitness. And then here, the cafeteria shifts, and the band rooms were removed, and there's a new service area. So we're able to control all community resource spaces in a new kitchen, service, and receiving area, because all the mechanicals and everything are going to have to be new. And so this would be a same strategy. You have to do it anyways, but can you use that and reprogram the building? And so now you can have a clear separation from a community to the academic wing. And then showing the upper level, similar to the others, the floor plan, but here those vacant inward spaces are now open to below. So we're able to get natural light deep into the plan. Now, if you remember those diagrams from the past phase, we were showing you how it's kind of dark within the corridor. And is there a way to really get natural light into these spaces, because the building is very wide in these portions. And this is a strategy to bring natural light into the spaces, activate it, give it new life, and reduce square footage. That's going to, at the end, help reduce cost. Okay. So then we go into option 4, because the MSBA is going to at least expect to see one of these options that goes a bit more aggressive. In here, same site plan, so we don't need to go into too much detail. This retains the gym, and a new addition provides a new performing arts center and a cafeteria. It opens it up. We have an outdoor dining on the north side, entry plazas, and the pre-K is going to be in the same location. And so the strategy here is when we submit to the MSBA, you did your due diligence by showing options that keep it at your full capacity at 184 and then going to 158, but also showing some deduct to see in new addition, because they do require you to look at some new additions as well. And so the plan's pretty much the same. On the east, we have the pre-K and life skills and the resource and healthcare pathway program innovation cluster. Here, we were able to actually get the computer science back down. So you have a really clean diagram and the business and marketing program. And then over on the community wing, now keep in mind, the only piece that remained was the existing gymnasium in the basement below. But by removing the auditorium and the band rooms and the academic spaces, you're able to now get a new auditorium and proper band rooms and dressing and support within there. I do have a label said dining. That's a kind of a typo there, so I'll correct that in the show. And then to the north, when you enter the building, you have the cafeteria that serves as a reception space for the auditorium and the gymnasium, new kitchen and service, and then that opens out to the outside dining. So this is kind of a simple move of a deduct and keeping, I would say, kind of the primary spaces up on C for the gym. But you can see how you're able to kind of reprogram this. And then upstairs, the building's pretty much the same as far as the academic portion. And then here we're looking at maybe an upper balcony level, so you could have some of the seats on the lower level and a portion of the seats on the upper level within the same house space. And then as we're required, we need to look at new construction. And so here we kept the multi-purpose field in the same location because you want to be able to kind of compare these apples to apples. We put the new school where your baseball and softball field will be located at 158,000 square feet. Tried to do proportionally the same amount of parking, but this one obviously has more roadways and site development. And then we kept the, we had to relocate the baseball and softball field over the existing school. So when the existing school is demoed, you're still carrying a cost for the baseball and softball. And I think it's important because when you look at apples to apples, you want to make sure you still have the same program for all the options. And that kind of summarizes what we've been looking at and, you know, a build up from the educational plan and all that diagramming. So if anyone has any questions, I can kind of respond to that.
So Kent, under the new construction option, are you going to be presenting to the MSBA the floor plan?
Nope.
They don't want to see that at all?
Nope.
Oh.
I'll show a diagram. That's the challenge of the existing, because typically even with yours, we'll probably show bubbles over your partitions, not as much as we kind of tested there. But we'll think about that graphics. But no, floor plans are not required. Proper adjacencies and making sure it hits 158,000 is there. It has the same partee as separating the community from the academic, but this is PDP. This is about creating a program and coming up with what you're going to look at in the next phase. The next phase is actually looking at the design options a little bit more detail. So what you're saying is you're carrying 5 design options over, and there could be hybrids out of that 5. So we could get up to say 8, 10, and then you're going to narrow it down. But if there's no strong desire because of cost or logistics or something for new construction, you carry it to the next phase, you talk about it, and that could kind of be the end of it. But no, they don't expect floor plans of this plan.
Do they require us to present the final estimated cost and design of new construction?
Yes. As part of at the final, as a magnitude, as a concept?
Final, no.
Concept.
With the concept.
Sorry, concept. Okay.
Yeah, so the estimator will take 158,000 and use benchmark data and apply a new construction cost to 186,000. They'll carry the cost of the full demolition of the existing Bartlett High at 184,000 square feet. They'll add the new baseball, the new softball. So you can see that the value begins to track up a little high when you look at what it would take to do new construction. And that's enough for what the MSBA wants to see. They do not want to see you go into floor plans. It goes a little deep. And the reason I showed you that was we want to prove you can do some exciting things just by, some relatively small moves within your existing building. And I think meeting the educational plan and some strategic moves, you have options that keep your building whole without taking anything down. And you have options that are going to bring it to that program square footage. And they'll be satisfied with that.
Has your team assessed that the other 4 options can be completed while the kids are in the building?
That's the next phase to see if we're going to need any kind of temporary classrooms. Because
Okay.
again, they're concepts, and we feel confident that you're going to be able to shift around because you do have all the vacant spaces, but everyone's going to have to get out of a building. Maybe not central office. Typically it's done by floor level in a building of your condition because you have a good condition. So it's going to be done by floor level. So it'll be A wing first floor, A wing second floor. So you're going to have to displace that floor. The only issue is it's going to extend, obviously, construction because you're phasing and you're swinging, students, and you have hazardous material to move around. But that's very common on public school projects. So this is a 24-month. This is a 24-month project. What you see here, the ad renos are going to be more in the line of 30 because you have to swing the students so much. And if you did bring portable classrooms, they're not reimbursed by the MSBA. So you have to consider that as well. That can expedite the construction because of the displacement.
Any other questions from the committee? Is that it for your presentation, Kent?
Yeah, that's it for the presentation. And I know Monique had sent also a couple links to, we had a videographer do a walkthrough of the existing building. It's kind of like the Google map technology, so you can kind of click and see within the space. And that could be a good tool for the community. Just if they haven't been in your existing high school in a long time, they can kind of click and see what the gymnasium looks like. And also we've given you some kind of a draft look at the existing conditions. So that's going to be part of the PDP submission in 2 weeks. These options are going to be part of the PDP submission, and our estimator is going to take these and provide some concept pricing to this. Now, that's not going to solidify the cost. It's used as a benchmark, and it's helpful because we're able to go down or up and clarify scope going into the next phase. And then scope's clarified even further. But at the end of come November in schematic design, this is all part of building a budget. We need to lock in that budget. So if a multi-purpose field with bleachers and a concession stand is important to the town of Webster, we're going to need to have that conversation come fall. But it's not a heavy lift to carry this as a concept through the summer so we can have those conversations. And I think this is good. It's a roadmap so you can see all the pieces we're thinking about.
Any other questions or comments? Once again, on behalf of the committee, let me just thank all the staff and the administration and the folks from Flansburgh and their team. I know a lot of work has gone into this and more will continue. Mrs. Perangeli, just for the record, I noticed Mr. Paranto has joined us, but I did not capture when he joined us. Did you happen to capture that when you let him in the meeting?
Unmute. I believe around 6:45, 6:44.
Thank you. So if there's no further questions, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the warrant. And I believe this is the first warrant we have received that was not just Collier's expenses. So Ken, this might be a question for you. Just as a reminder to me and maybe some of the members who are new to this process, you as the owner's project manager, whenever you get an invoice from a firm that we are contracted with, your team reviews the invoice to make sure it's within the scope of the contract, that it's appropriate based on the services that are identified in the invoice. Is that a fair statement?
That's correct. Yep. And then we make sure that we code them to the MSBA propay code as well.
And then, Mr. Perangeli, when your office receives the invoices from Colliers, your team does roughly a similar process, make sure what they're submitting fits within the contract, seems to be appropriate, et cetera.
Correct.
And with that being said, we have been asked to approve a warrant total $99,490, which consists of 3 invoices from Flansburgh. Are there any questions regarding the warrant that has been submitted? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the warrant as presented.
So moved.
Second,
The motion was made by Mrs. Blais, seconded by Mrs. Contos. Hearing no further discussion, Mrs. Contos,
yes.
Ms. Nieves,
Yes.
Mr. Young,
Yes.
Mrs. Blais,
Yes.
Mr. Avalos,
Yes.
Mr. Paranto.
Yes.
And I vote yes, the motion passes unanimously. Our next meeting is April 15th at 6 p.m. via Zoom. Are there any other concerns or questions from anyone on the committee? Hearing none, again, let me thank everybody for the additional meeting that we held this evening, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Motion made by Mrs. Blais, seconded by Mrs. Contos. I will pull the committee. Mrs. Contos,
yes.
Ms. Nieves,
Yes.
Mr. Young,
Yes.
Mrs. Blais,
Yes.
Mr. Avalos,
Yes.
Mr. Paranto,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you all.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Good
Nice
night.
job, Ted. Nice job.
Thank you.
Really nice job. Happy Easter, everybody.